What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Whop Media YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard as usual, and I'm excited to announce that for this video, we have partnered with Whop.com, WHOP.com. Whop is an all-in-one marketplace for sports communities and other digital products. If you're looking to find communities on all things sports, sports capping, sports betting, and sports fandom, head to Whop.com/sports. They're the all-in-one digital marketplace, the Amazon of the future for digital products. I'm incredibly proud and excited to be partnering, so make sure to go check that out. You can click the link in our description and our comments. Thank you to Whop for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you guys for tuning in.
Check it out.
Step back, James Harden, right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey.
Joel
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Whop Media YouTube channel. I am here with my guy, Josh Reynolds, today. You know him from the That's Ball Folks podcast, presented by Liberty Ballers, which is awesome. Thrilled to have Josh back on the pod. Josh, how you doing today?
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it, brother. It's always a pleasure when I get to jump on and chat with you.
Yeah, definitely. Your podcast is for real, like a little ray of sunshine of positivity and everything. So I look forward to listening to it all the time, and make sure you guys check that out if you haven't. Just awesome stuff, and just throw the great stuff you got going on. So as far as today, we're going to be touching on a little Sixers kind of check-in, status report, how things are going. Obviously kind of cruising right now, a fairly easy stretch of games. And then we're going to do something a little different and dive in a little around the NBA, a little favorite player on each team, and just kind of not necessarily the best player or a hard-hitting basketball tape, but just kind of guys that we enjoy watching is something that we're going to talk about. So I guess to kick it off, Josh, where are you at with the Sixers team right now? We've kind of had some ups and downs, obviously a lot of injuries, been better of late. What are your feelings on this team?
Yeah, man, it's funny. You nailed it. It's a roller coaster. It's almost like they're bipolar. But you've got to play and kind of take into account for the injuries, right? Obviously, when all three, Embiid, Harden, and Maxey were out, it's like, okay, we got to calm down with all these hot takes. We have no idea what this team's capable of. And slowly they've been coming back and they've looked great. And then you'll have a hiccup game and you're like, what is going on? Like you take 10 steps forward and then one step back. And it's like, what? Like, I thought I liked this team. I thought I knew this team. But now, honestly, with Embiid coming back last night, like, granted, it's the Pistons, but like, we are clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And it is, there have been a lot of talk. I've been on Twitter today. A lot of people saying, hey, is this like, this team's for real, but how good is this team? And people comparing it to the Sixers teams in the past. But right now, as all is, like, I feel very good, especially I know we've got one more game before we step into this West Coast stretch, but I feel good, man. I feel real good going into this West Coast swing. I think if we can continue this momentum and even just steal a few of these road games, like, prime.
Yeah, absolutely. And pretty important from like a standings aspect from the streak of wins that they picked up. It's going to get tougher from here. Their schedule kind of throughout the rest of the season is more difficult than the past stretch, at least. But I think that's a good thing for the Sixers team, to be honest. Like, they need to be tested. We need to see exactly a measuring stick of how they line up. Because, like, as you mentioned, like, the highs of the high of this team have been great. Like, there's been some moments where things have looked very good. And we've also seen moments where it's like, this doesn't even look like basketball that this team is playing right now. So, but in the meantime, like the recent string, I mean, James Harden is just sleepwalking to triple doubles at this point, back-to-back games where he does it in a quarter and a half. Joel Embiid set the NBA record for quickest 35 points and 10 rebounds in a game last night, which is just nuts stuff. We got to see some run with Jaden Springer and some of the young guys finishing out that game. What do you think specifically of the James Harden and Joel Embiid duo? Is it growing the way that you hoped? Are you excited about it? You think there's more to untap still?
I think what we're seeing now is exactly what every Sixers fan has dreamed of. Yeah. I think that Harden has not only stepped up from what we saw last year, but even with the injury and stuff this year, like he is exceeding my expectations. The game looks so unbelievably slow and simple to him that, I mean, like you said, he's walking triple double, and looking at his last couple games, it's like the dude's hardly even trying, and is some of those entry passes that he had to Embiid, which shouldn't be a hard thing, a post-entry pass, but as we've learned over the last few years of these Sixers teams, it is a hard thing. Yeah. And the way that Harden's doing it, the dude isn't even over half court yet, and he already has Embiid set up right underneath the hoop. Like, I am thrilled. I gotta pull it up. Sixers. It's a Twitter account that I love. Sixers board.
Sixers
No,
break room.
break room.
Yes.
Dude is awesome.
Yes.
He did a little breakdown today of kind of the little pick and roll that Embiid and Harden have going, and it's a perfect breakdown. If you haven't checked it out yet, please take a look. But it broke down everything that we could have possibly imagined and hoped for putting these two guys together. And I fully think that this is them at their peak. And if they can continue this, like, again, watching the film, there's no chance that anybody can stop them.
Yeah.
Once Harden gets over top of that pick and roll and goes downhill, it's 2-on-1. Defender has to make a decision. He's going to make the wrong decision every single time. Like, I'm thrilled. I know I'm rambling. I'm just so excited. I don't even know what else to say.
No, yeah, you're great. And yeah, shout out Sixers Break Room. Logan over there does some great stuff. He's been on the pod too. And yes, awesome dude, awesome content. So more great stuff there. And yeah, it's very fun when it clicks with the James Harden, Joel Embiid kind of pick and roll, the 2-man game that they're developing. That like little mid-range jumper is amazing, like how comfortable it is with Embiid hitting that, especially when you think back, like that was not the guy that came in the league. Like he was a post guy, a very raw, and for that to be like such a refined shot and such just like a pure kind of touch play, for that to be his bread and butter is amazing. And even Harden with like, obviously the postseason is going to be the true measuring stick for what he's got, because we're going to see Embiid be defended all up and down every which way. Like he's not going to be touching the kind of numbers he does now just based on defensive attention. And that's going to come on Harden to kind of pick that up. And that's going to be, I guess, kind of the make or break of this team. But even still, like, to have a guy that like, I feel great about that being our second option, and he's showing me something. And I think we're seeing a version of James Harden which cares in a way that like hasn't been the case with him in a couple years.
Yep, you nailed it. It's something about this team too. Like there's no bad like body language. You can tell that we've had teams that kind of get along and everybody's buddy. Something is different about this team. You can just feel it. You can see them. They're doing their little thing and like warm-ups and layup line, and everybody's happy, but everybody is involved in it. Like there's no bad body language. Nobody's bummed out. There's nobody dragging everybody down. Like this team is just flowing and meshing and gelling, and it is fantastic to see.
Yeah, definitely. And the last specific guy I want to talk about before we get into across the league is Tyrese Maxey. And we saw the return of him kind of dealing with the first real, I guess, like turmoil or just injury, whatever, however you want to phrase it, with an extended timeout coming back. It's great to see him hitting his stride again. Where do you see him kind of in the pecking order to this team, the fit within the roster? And I guess just how awesome is it that this guy is a Sixer?
Yeah, I love Maxey, man. And shout out to him as of today, signing that New Balance shoe deal, which is very cool. I'm not a New Balance guy, but maybe I can slowly become one with Maxey signing his deal. But I love it, man. He's just the happiest dude, just a ray of sunshine. And the fact that he can do what he does is he's a freak. And so to be able to have him and Tobias as like a third, fourth option, like you said, once playoffs roll around, we know what's happening. Like we know what's coming. Embiid is going to be double, triple team. They're going to throw every type of coverage possible at him. So to have a guy like Maxey, who's right there alongside Harden, like pick your poison. So it's slowly getting him back into the swing of things and coming off his injury, of course, and getting him more minutes and acclimated. It's going to be interesting to see because, again, there was a ton of talk where before Max came back, people wanted him to come off the bench. Melton was playing great, and I'm not taking anything away from Melton, but Melton is that guy. That's what he's been. He's been that guy his whole career. He was that in Memphis, and he excels at that. Yeah. I just love that finding a way that we can have Embiid, Harden, Maxey on the floor at the same time and staggering those minutes. That was probably the hardest part of the Sixers team while they were all out, is seeing, or at least while Maxey was out, seeing some of these lineups that Doc rolled out of all bench units. It was painful. So now that Maxey's back, there's absolutely no reason that at least one of the three between Harden, Maxey, and Embiid shouldn't be on the floor at all times. So, but yeah, I love Maxey, man. I sound just like the biggest homer, most hilarious guy ever, that I'm just so happy and positive. But the way this team's playing right now, it's almost impossible not to be.
Yeah, definitely. You can only beat who's in front of you, so they're doing just that. And as you mentioned, like Maxey, just the joy that he plays with, the smile that he brings, the change of pace is a legitimate weapon within the Sixers offense, and pair that with the shooting is great. I do think what they need to figure out is like it's going to take all of them just being around, and knock on wood, prayers up that they all remain healthy for the season. But it is just figuring out how to stagger them. How do you do the lineups that optimizes his team in the best way? And DeAnthony Melton, his role, while I do agree that he will be back in a bench role and be coming off, is still incredibly important to this team from a defensive impact standpoint. A guy being able to pair him with players like Maxey and Harden who have their defensive limitations at times, it's awesome. So we are seeing a more well-rounded roster, and I do think we're going to kind of see what this team is made of moving forward, which is exciting. And yeah, I can't wait. And to switch gears a little into around the league now. So like I said, this will be kind of going back and forth, our kind of favorite player to watch on this team, or guy we just really like the style of their game. And let's kick this off at the top of the Eastern Conference with the Boston Celtics. Josh, who do you have as the Celtic that intrigues you the most?
I've got Marcus Smart.
Nice.
Now, I know that might be a little hot take because he is a love or hate guy, and he's the definition of a guy who you hate if he's not on your team and you love him if he's on your team. And that's exactly why I love him.
Yeah.
Big fan. I like dudes who I could see in a Sixers uniform, and Marcus Smart, it seems like a Philly guy to me.
Yeah.
I love how hard he plays. I love that he took his game from nothing. Now all of a sudden he's like a 3-point threat. I just love how hard he plays. I'm a Marcus Smart guy.
Yeah, totally agree. And he's turned himself into like a legitimate asset within like the NBA as far as his role, the way he can fit, a defensive player of the year type of guy, being more versatile in the position he guard is great. And he brings that energy. He brings that Philly sting, the whatever you want to call it, on an every night basis. So I also am a fan of Marcus Smart. I understand why he's polarizing, and I like that pick too. I'm going to go with mine, Robert Williams, who a guy, he's obviously been out for a significant portion of the season with injury, so we haven't seen him at his full best, but in the 10 games that he has played, averaging 19.8 minutes, 7.7 points, 7.6 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, shooting 82.9% from the field. To me, he's just a perfect, like, what you need in a center when you're looking in the postseason. The guy that, like, doesn't need much of the ball, is terrific in the pick and roll, can defend multiple positions, super versatile, and it just feel like he's a guy who makes things happen every time he's out there. So I love Robert Williams.
I like that pick. That's good. I also like Robert Williams.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll switch gears to the Nets now. Second in the Eastern Conference, who KD, hate to see the injury there. Hopefully he's all right. And that's going to be a big hit because they seemed like they were starting to click there. What do you think about the Nets, and who's your player that's your standout there?
I love, again, this sounds funny. I love Seth Curry. Always have, always will. Obviously, he's had a weird season, kind of riddled with injuries, things like that. I could have said Kyrie. I could have said KD. Those are kind of givens. But I just love Seth Curry. I love shooters. Absolutely love shooters. I play basketball myself. I'm a shooter, so I'm fascinated with guys who move off the ball, constantly moving, like the JJ Redick types, which is Seth Curry, right? So I just love watching him play. And like you said, it sucks having KD get hurt. Obviously, taking a Sixers fan perspective out of it sucks just as a basketball fan to see KD get hurt because Brooklyn just started clicking and started rolling. It was almost like they put that Kyrie drama behind them and started to slowly take those steps forward. And I mean, Ben Simmons is kind of a whole different story. We won't even touch it. Yeah. But yeah, I love Curry. Always have, always will.
Yeah, a guy who definitely will always be remembered fondly in Philadelphia too. He was terrific next to Embiid in a little two-man game there, everything that he did for this team. And he was an awesome addition while he was here, so we'll always be remembered fondly. We'll certainly be welcome back if the opportunity ever presents itself. And shout out to Seth Curry for sure. For my Nets pick, I'm going to go with Nick Claxton, another guy kind of similar to Robert Williams in this, but 11.9 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, 2.6 blocks, shooting 73.8% from the field. He's a great just complementary piece to those stars like Kevin Durant, like Kyrie Irving, makes his impact felt on both ends of the floor. And when we talk about the Ben Simmons thing, like, I really think Nick Claxton's kind of his competition for what minutes are going to be on this team because he's kind of filling that role, and the strides forward that he's just taken in his still young career are impressive. He's just added layers year after year, and I'm a huge Nick Claxton fan for sure.
Yep, I like it.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll move on to the Bucks number 3. I'll start off with my pick here. I'm sticking with another center, and I'm going with Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez, 14.5 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 2.6 blocks. And the thing that fascinates me the most about him is just kind of the career arc this guy has gone on from when really he was in his prime as like a post-up guy with the Nets, a guy who was like a 20-plus point per game scorer, a legitimate, very good player in this league. To this point, for this stat here, he's now basically like a 3-and-D guy at the center position, which is crazy and just a perfect compliment to Giannis. From 2008 to the 2009 season, all the way to the 2015 to 2016 season, he attempted just 31 total three-pointers. Just so far this year, he's attempted 194. So just ridiculous, that kind of trajectory and willingness to change his game to fit the times and everything. But yeah, what do you think of who's your Bucks pick for your player?
So before I cover mine, I love Lopez,
Yeah.
and it also sucks that Embiid seems to always struggle against Lopez.
Yeah.
He's like you said, he's the perfect big for that team. Also, it's a little stressful to think about. We could have possibly had him in free agency, but we signed Amir Johnson back in
Yikes.
the day, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, who would have ever thought that Lopez would all of a sudden learn how to shoot threes? Nobody could have ever predicted that. But I also like Lopez. He's that's a solid pick. I love newcomer Joe Ingles.
Love it.
He spent his career out here in Utah. Just slow-mo Joe is what they call him. He's this just old man game lefty. The game that we were talking about Harden earlier, where everything's just slowed down to him. That's the definition of Joe Ingles' game.
Yeah.
And he is, when they signed him, he tore his ACL last year. When the Bucks signed him in free agency this year, it was like, oh wow, okay, this is like, if he comes back healthy, this could be the perfect piece. And what we've seen of it so far, he is.
Yeah.
If he can continue playing like he has out here in Utah, hitting threes, coming off that pick and roll with him and Giannis, like what we saw, it was I want to say his first game back from injury. Dude hit like 5 threes, and just that pick and roll with Giannis, it's impossible to stop. So Joe Ingles, he's always been my guy. Dudes who look like that, who look like they shouldn't be in the NBA but are, kind of like Niang type vibes.
Yeah.
I love those dudes.
Yeah, totally. And one of my like prime memories of Joe Ingles is in the Matisse Thybulle vlogs from the behind the scenes at the Olympics. Is he was always there, just kind of like sipping a Corona and hanging out. And I'm just like, that is awesome. That guy's like a legitimate like positive NBA player, and like that's his personality, that's his vibe. So gotta love Joe Ingles, and yeah, that Bucks team is definitely scary when it comes fully together this season.
Yep, agreed.
Moving on to the hometown team and the Sixers. Who are you putting as your favorite Sixer on this? I kind of struggled with this one a little, but what are you going with?
I did the same thing. I struggled. I tried to like think a little bit deeper, but I'm staying surface level because he's my favorite player. Joel Embiid is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's impossible to not pick him. I think every Sixers fan would say that. Obviously, people have their favorite players, whatever, but just strictly from watching, it's unbelievable. Like you said, where he's come from when he entered the league to what he is now, where that mid-range shot is just automatic. He hits it 3 times in a row, then gives a little pump fake, gets to the bucket so easy. Like, without question, he is my favorite player in the entire league to watch. I couldn't sleep with myself tonight if I didn't say Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I went through pretty much the exact same thought process. I thought about giving Tyrese Maxey. DeAnthony Melton was a guy that I've really grown fond of quickly. I almost gave Paul Reed some love, but I couldn't go anywhere else but Joel Embiid. And just, it is amazing the progression that this guy's gone through, both on and off the court, the stuff that he's been through. And just think about like the stability that he has been in this franchise when everything around him has changed. Like there's been 4 GM changes, 2 coaching changes, over 100 teammates, and Joel Embiid just still is here and getting better. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say like I've probably watched like 99% of his time in the NBA as far as just on-court minutes, him on a nightly basis, and to see him continue to get better and develop in a player that like we couldn't even have imagined coming into the league is amazing. So Joel Embiid is for sure the lifeblood of the Sixers franchise, and a guy that I'm grateful to be watching on like an every night basis.
Couldn't agree more. Can you even like taking a step back to 2 seasons ago, the season he had was like, wow, like that's peak Embiid. He can't get better than that. Then we see last year where he realistically probably should have won MVP last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, we're not going to see better Embiid than that. And then he comes out this year and is just more consistent. He's in better shape. The game is just easier to him. He's better at passing out of double teams. Like everything about his game just continues to improve, even if subtly. Like you said, who could have ever imagined this? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's just become so polished, and just the things that he makes look casual now are absolutely insane. And it's a blessing to have him in a Sixers uniform before. And as long as he remains a Sixer, this team stands a chance every single year. So grateful for Joel Embiid, and shout out to him for everything that he has done for this franchise so far. To switch gears and move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, a little bit of the newcomers on the block. Who is your favorite Cavaliers player?
So I went back and forth between Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, but I had to go with Donovan Mitchell strictly from what he's been able to do. This stepping into a new system, a new team, new coach, teammates, everything. And he has not skipped a beat. He's only gotten better. Yeah. You could make an argument that this Cavs team is kind of the roster put around him is a little bit better suited for his game, which I think it is. Mm-hmm. Being able to play with Mobley and Jared Allen, bigs who bless Rudy Gobert's heart, but these guys are actually an offensive threat. Yeah. What we've seen Mitchell do is unbelievable. Seeing his return to Utah last night, yes, they lost, but you knew that he was going to have a big game. ended with like 46. But everything about his game is just so nasty. And it's funny to think back about the whole rookie of the year thing with him and Ben Simmons, because me being a Philly guy out here in Utah during all that, like I was stuck in the crosshairs where, of course, I had Ben Simmons back, but at the same time, I'm like, this dude is nasty. He is really good. And so to be able to see him even continue to kind of take those steps in his career, like we talked about Embiid a little bit ago, I love Mitchell, man. He's just so smooth. We were talking about it last night. He gets separation maybe better than anybody else in the entire league. And he's unbelievable to watch, especially that 71-point game, which just unheard of. He's a freak.
Yeah, nuts stuff. He really does continue to get better every single year. I think the Cavs is a great landing spot for him, and something that like didn't get enough traction beforehand. Like it was kind of like, now that you look back, being like, that was a perfect spot for him to come. That was the perfect move for the franchise to take that leap, and it looks like it's working out. And I like the core that they have built. I think they got a ton of good pieces. Both Garland and Mitchell are terrific. I'm excited to watch this team, and I went a little bit more outside the box than the other two, and I went with Evan Mobley here. And I would like to see a little bit more growth from him. I haven't seen, I guess, the rapid rate of development that I hope, but there's still just something there for me that I really think has a chance to be like a generational defender in the way that he can be versatile, switch on to guys. Looking at his numbers for this year, 14.2 points, 8.8 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.3 blocks. I love the way he plays. He seems like a super smart player. He can make reads. He can pass a little bit. I hope he kind of takes that next step and become that like the guy that can be like a true like third piece to Garland and Mitchell. But I'm a huge fan of his game, and I'm excited to see what he becomes.
The Cavs are nasty.
Yeah,
they scare me. They scare me a lot.
yeah, they're a team to watch this year. And to move on to the next team, maybe not as scary, but still a young core that's pretty exciting, and that's the Pacers. So who is your Pacers standout that you're looking forward to watching more of?
Easy Tyrese Halliburton.
Nice.
I loved him in Sacramento. I loved him in college, but I loved him in Sacramento and was absolutely floored when they traded him. I thought that's a dude who you build your franchise around. But to be able to see what he's done and how Indiana's used him more as like a actual point guard has been so awesome. Yeah. Seeing him, I mean, is he still leading the league in assists? I know if not, he's right up there. And the whole Wally Szczerbiak thing, saying that he wasn't an all-star, like, I don't know what world Wally Szczerbiak lives in, but of course this dude is an all-star. He's a freak. He is so good. And all of that said, his shot is one of the most interesting looking shots I've ever seen. It's like he doesn't even jump. And the fact that a dude like that can get his shot off and actually hit it consistently in the NBA is amazing. I love Halliburton. Everything about his game fascinates me.
Yeah, super smooth, awesome guy to root for too. That shot was like the biggest concern for me, like looking at him making that NBA leap. I'm like, is that going to like translate? And it more than has. He's been like a 40+% 3-point shooter, a guy that can lead a team. His playmaking has grown in ways I couldn't even imagine, and just a super fun guy, super fun player to watch. So I love Halliburton. I think that's a great pick there. And also pretty cool how the Kings, the whole like Halliburton Sabonis trade and all that is kind of working out for both sides in a way that like everyone overreacted and was like, Sacramento's nuts for this. It seems like everybody's winning from it.
A rare win-win in today's NBA. Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. And for my Pacers pick, I'm going to go with my guy, Benedict Mathurin here. I absolutely love Benedict Mathurin. Another guy who's just super fun to watch. 17.1 points, 3.9 rebounds, 1.4 assists, leading the NBA in points off the bench so far this season as a rookie. I loved him at Arizona. I love the confidence he has, him calling himself the best player in the country last year while in college. I'm excited to see what this guy grows into. I really think he has potential to be that like true co-star to Halliburton, and that they have a core here. So I'm a huge fan of his game, and I'm excited to see what it becomes.
I think so too. Watching him in college, you could tell that obviously the dude was a scorer, but to be able to have him kind of transition into that 6-man role so quickly is something I didn't see coming. I thought he would be a bench guy for the next few years, kind of like a Hardy in Dallas type role, but to be able to see him actually get minutes and be able to produce so quickly, I love it.
Yeah, the way he gets to the rim, the physicality he plays with, to me, has been what's like impressed me the most. Like, he's not afraid to go create, put his shoulder down, and attack in a way that rookies aren't a lot of times. So I'm thrilled by him, and I'm excited to see what he becomes. We'll move on to the number 7 seed here, which is the New York Knicks, and another franchise that's in a little bit of an interesting spot. Jalen Brunson's obviously been great there signing. Who's your favorite Knicks to watch so far this year?
So full transparency, the Knicks they're not the funnest team for me to watch.
Sure. Yeah.
But I will say I could have said RJ Barrett, but I really like Emmanuel quickly.
Nice.
Always have. I think that he's just another one of those guards. I'm not just saying comparing him to Maxey because they're Kentucky guys, but their games are to me a little bit similar in that aspect of just the shiftiness, the quickness to be able to stretch the floor and still hit those kind of pull up threes. I like quickly. The Knicks have been weird, man. They've been like stuck in this just mediocrity for so long that you just wait. Like the Brunson signing, I think everybody felt the same way of like, okay, you do it because you need somebody, but I don't think he's the guy who gets you to the next step. And clearly he's not. But yeah, they're stuck in this just weird middle ground. And I don't know what it's going to take for them to get better. But this team, as of now, because Quickly's name was attached to Donovan Mitchell trade rumors and stuff all offseason too. So I don't know. For me, I really like Quickly. No matter where he goes, I will be a fan of his game. But currently, he's my favorite Nick to watch.
Yeah, definitely a fun player for sure. They are an interesting spot, and that mediocre kind of middle ground is the toughest place to be in the NBA. So they've been star hunting for seemingly forever. Hopefully,
Yeah.
a guy comes through and kind of changes that. But I don't know. It will be interesting to watch. As far as for right now, my pick, I'm going with Quentin Grimes as mine. And by the way, I do agree. I had more trouble with the Knicks as far as probably one of the toughest choices I had for
Yeah.
teams because I don't know. It's something about them. They're just not the most exciting. You don't have guys that jump out, but I do like Quentin Grimes quite a bit. 28.8 minutes a game, 10.2 points, 3.3 rebounds, 2.0 assists. It's not easy as a young player to crack the rotation with Tom Thibodeau as his coach, and he's finding a way. He's a hard-nosed player, plays gritty, defensive side of the ball. And there's been the nights where there was a game where Randall and Brunson were out where he stepped up and had 30 plus, and I was like, all right, like this is a guy that could be a piece for them in the long term. So I like Grimes quite a bit.
Yeah, I like that.
Perfect. And we'll move on to the 8th seed in the East right now, which is the Miami Heat. Another team that I had a little bit of trouble kind of making my pick for. But who is your favorite Miami Heat player?
Same. This was some of these like rivals, if you can call them that the Sixers have. Like we'll get to the Hawks in a bit. I have a really hard time with teams like that, and the Heat are one of them. This might be funny, but again, I touched on it earlier where with Seth Curry in Brooklyn. I love shooters, and so just watching him play without like a fan cap on or goggles or anything like that, I like Duncan Robinson.
Nice.
He is overpaid. There's no question about it. But seeing how he plays and just the constant movement, like I mentioned, with JJ Redick type dudes, where they move more without the ball than they do with the actual ball in their hands. And I love that. I'm fascinated by it. Moving off picks, coming off picks, hitting threes, step backs, everything like that. I like the way he plays. Absolutely doesn't deserve the money that he's getting, and they're kind of stuck with that. And it's going to be even more trouble for them this offseason. But Duncan Robinson's my guy.
Yeah, I like that. I think he's kind of got a bum rap kind of being shaken out of that rotation. And granted, I know Tyler Hero is the better player compared to him, but I don't think it's by the margin that it's kind of made out to be. And
Agreed.
yeah. So I would like to see Duncan kind of get a new home, find his spot and get a chance because I do think he's that good of a shooter that he deserves a role somewhere. So the money thing's always going to be a hurdle. Go ahead.
Imagine Duncan like in Indiana. Like a dude like that would be perfect in a place in a system like that. Like kind of what Kevin Huerter's doing in Sacramento. I think Duncan could easily do in Indiana, somewhere like that.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully he finds that for sure. I'm gonna go with Caleb Martin as my pick. A guy that I've liked in college back in the Nevada days, but he just kind of plays a hard-nosed way, plays the game the right way, averaging 31.4 minutes, 10.4 points, 4.8 rebounds, 1.9 assists, shooting 38.9% from three this year. He doesn't need the ball a ton. He's comfortable being like a complimentary piece, and he's always like ready to scrap, to do the hard-nosed thing and do whatever. So I like Martin. He's kind of one of the Heat culture guys that I actually do buy into, do like. And I also almost went with Victor Oladipo because I'm happy to see him kind of finding his footing again. But yeah, Caleb Martin, my pick for the Heat.
I like that. I like Martin.
Yeah, and I guess the even rougher rival, as we kind of brought up here, is the Atlanta Hawks. And so who did you end up going with, sucking it up and taking for your Atlanta Hawks pick?
Yeah, this was hard. I couldn't in good conscience take anybody who was on their roster during the series that we lost to.
Yeah.
I should, like, looking at my game, everything I've said, I like shooters. I'm a smaller guy, so a shooter myself. Like, I should in every other aspect like Trae Young and the way he plays, and I cannot stand him. I am just not a Trae Young guy, not at all. So I had to go with the only guy who, honestly, this offseason, he's kind of become a little weasel, but I like DeJounte Murray. The way he plays and the way he played more in San Antonio, I think, was more of the DeJounte Murray who like we liked. Yes, he's still been good in Atlanta, but I don't think, and I think they would be the first ones to say that, hey, this has not worked out how we thought it was going to work out.
Yeah.
At least right off the bat like this. But I still think there's something there. There's always dudes like John Collins his name will always be attached to trade rumors, things like that. I almost picked Bogdanovich, but I just had instant PTSD of him hitting three after three after three during our series with them. So I went to DeJounte Murray. I had to do it.
Yeah. I kind of had a similar mindset there. I couldn't pick a guy on the team either. And for Trae Young specifically, I think like he's become somewhat underrated at the national scale. Like all these guys kind of talk on him like he can't be a 1A, and I'm like, no, like I've seen him rip our hearts out. Like I've
He can do it.
Yeah, like he can do it. But yeah, it's tough to really root for him or have faith in a guy like that from an opposing standpoint. But yeah, I also went with a guy on not the team, and I'm going with AJ Griffin as my favorite Hawks player. Duke product, 9.9 points per game, shooting the ball great, and a guy that's worked his way into the starting lineup for stretches there on a team that is genuinely trying to win right now, which is not easy as a rookie. And he's a guy I think you can kind of plug and play into any team across the NBA and is a great fit. So I love AJ Griffin. I'm happy to see where he ends up and what this Hawks team really does, because it does not sound like the vibes are great there whatsoever. So I think we could. Do you think we could see a blow up there soon?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if it will come as soon as this deadline, but I think something happens, especially if this team underperforms and really ends the season with like a first round exit. I think there could be some sort of blow up. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we'll move on to number 10. Another team kind of bordering on the blow up zone is the Chicago Bulls. Who do you have as your favorite Chicago Bull this year?
Yeah, I love DeRozan. I always have, but I went Alex Caruso on this one.
Nice.
Former Sixer Summer League standout. Have to
Oh,
give
yeah.
him that shout out. Yep. But I just love the way he plays. He's the guy. He's like a more athletic TJ McConnell, which how can you not love that guy?
Yeah.
And TJ will always be one of my favorite players ever. But I just love the way Caruso plays, does all the dirty stuff, the stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheets, everything that coaches rave about. But also can step up. Like his last little stretch hasn't been great because the team hasn't been great. They're just tripping over themselves. But when things are clicking, like last year, at least the start of the season last year, Caruso was the man. Like that was a good product that they put together. And it's kind of honestly been sad to see it implode like it has.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not a team living up the way it was lined up to be or hoped to be. I think Caruso is going to be a guy that's snatched up by a contender and play some
Yep.
really positive minutes moving forward, as he should and as he deserves to, and can definitely fill that role. So that'll be exciting to end up with. I went with Ayo Dosunmu as my pick, the Illinois guy. I loved him with the mask in college. He stripped it for most of the pros, so I wish he kept that on a little bit, but he does a little bit of everything. I think he's going to be even better the more he grows into a more on-ball role. He's kind of stuck with like how ball dominant both Levine and DeRozan are right now, but he's still finding ways to make impact. And I also love Dalen Terry, who hasn't really cracked the rotation at all, but another Arizona guy who he's a smack the floor, clap in your face, bring energy kind of guy. If Caruso is moved on to, I see Dalen Terry fully sliding into that role. So I'm excited about him. I'm excited for what that's going to be. And we'll move on to another team that isn't particularly likable is the Toronto Raptors at the 11th seed in the East right now. Is there anybody on the Raptors that you were comfortable picking as a favorite player of yours?
Yes. For whatever reason, he's never bugged me, and I've always liked him, is Gary Trent Jr.
Nice.
I am a huge fan. Again, another shooter, but he is a guy who I also, especially a couple seasons ago, like I could see him in a Sixers uniform.
Yeah.
He unfortunately kills us every time we play the Raptors. Him and Boucher all of a sudden Boucher is hilarious because he's lights out every single time we play him.
Yeah.
And it's really, really frustrating. But I really like Gary Trent Jr. Always have thought that he was awesome in Portland, really made a name for himself and a career for himself. And so it's been cool to see him do his thing up in Toronto. I think he's going to be another one of those guys that a contender goes out and gets. His contract, he's a little overpaid, but I still think it's manageable where somebody is going to go snatch him up and he's good, man. He can score the ball.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have Gary Trent Jr. as my pick as well, so I'm on the same page there.
Good.
A perfect kind of 3-and-D guy, perfect for today's NBA. He can put the ball on the floor, but create a little on his own, and he's comfortable playing off ball as well. Hard-nosed guy, a very cool and like fun player to root with. So I like Gary Trent Jr. I hope he gets swiped up by somebody for sure. And
get him out of Toronto. Get him out.
Get him out. Put him on somebody that we can root for, somebody fun. So I hope that's the case for sure. We'll move on to number 12. I had a tough time picking for this Orlando Magic team. There's a lot of intriguing, fun, young guys there. Who do you have for your pick for the Magic?
I went Paulo.
Nice.
This one was easy for me. I love Paulo at Duke, and I on my podcast had this segment where there were talks about, honestly, leading up until the day of the draft, where they didn't know who they were going to take, whether it was going to be Jabari or him. And I just was like, look, I don't understand why you wouldn't take Paulo. And that's no knock on Jabari. He's going to be fine, I think. But what we're seeing Paulo do right out of the gate is unbelievable. I think people don't realize, at least the casual fan don't realize how big he is.
Yeah.
He is a big dude. And so to be able to watch him score and move and shift like that, and then to be able to piece him together with a healthy Markelle Fultz, who, again, he's one of those guys I'll always rooted for him his entire time in Philly and want him to be healthy. But I think that kind of combo, and then you look at dudes like Bol who are actually like getting run. I don't know, man. The Magic to me have slowly become the funnest team to watch in the entire league. It sucks where their standing is, but like the same time, I wouldn't have guessed that they would have won as many games as they have to this point. They've got solid pieces to build on, and Paulo's my guy.
Yeah, totally. They are a blast to watch, and a ton of fun pieces there. A ton of like seemingly mismatched parts, but it kind of works on just like huge guys. Like Bol is playing like positive minutes for this team, and
Yes.
making like a great impact, which is crazy. I also totally agree. It never made sense to me why Jabari Smith was the perceived number 1 pick. And again, no disrespect to Jabari, I think he's going to be a fine player too. But Paulo just seemed to have the more complete game, the just more ready for the NBA, and I think he's proving that early on. I went with my guy who I think it's a little slept on just because of how many guys there are, and that's Mo Wagner, who I think is absolutely terrific. And the numbers stand out, averaging 20.2 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 3.4 assists. He's similar to Paolo, obviously not quite the top tier caliber, but he's another like 6'10" guy who can do a little bit of everything, create a little bit. And I think he gets lost in the shuffle a little more than he deserves. So I'm happy to give him the shout out, and I'm excited to see where his role falls in the pecking order of this team moving forward. To move on to the Washington Wizards at number 13, another team that I find a little hard to get excited about. But who are you going with for the Washington Wizards?
I went with former University of Utah running Ute, Kyle Kuzma.
Okay.
Loved Kuzma in college. Again, followed him closely here, and have been able to follow him throughout his career in the NBA, which it's kind of been, it's almost like a roller coaster. Like you don't fully get to see what he's capable of, because seeing who he was surrounded with in LA just like never gave him a chance to blossom. And so being able to see him, especially with Bradley Beal out, like you can see Kuzma's capable of actually, I don't know, I want to call him the guy, but he's shown glimpses of like, wow, he could score, he could drop 35, like easy. He is a good, and everybody said this when he was in college of like, oh, this guy's NBA ready. Like he's NBA ready. His stats at Utah they didn't jump off the paper or anything like that to you, but you could tell there was just something about his game. And seeing him blossom to this point in his career has been very fun. Again, being a Utah guy, but yeah, man, I like Kuzma. Especially, I love him in those cherry blossom jerseys that the Wizards wear. I'm a fan of those. I like those.
Yeah, I like that. Those are nice jerseys. And yeah, Kuzma's kind of won me back this time in Washington. I was kind of out on him when he started with the Lakers, and not really to a fault of his own, but I think he just kind of got blown up to a spot or a reputation that he wasn't quite ready for. I'm back in on the Kuzma train, on a guy that can play a winning brand of basketball, can rebound the ball incredibly well, which is something I never gave him credit for until recently. So I like Kuzma. I think he's another guy who seems to be hot on the trade market, and plenty of teams looking to benefit. And I think he can provide a positive punch to just about any team that he joins. So I'm excited to see if a trade does manifest itself. I went, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say real quick. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No,
the Lakers, it's LA, it's the LA spotlight, but it sucks that these guys, just like Kuzma, Lonzo Ball, yes, he was like the second overall or third overall draft pick, whatever it was. So he has these expectations, but they're almost like cast, or Horton Tucker, same thing. All we all heard about Horton Tucker for like years and years was he's the next LeBron. Like he's not tradable. And it's all these dudes, just because they're in LA, get this typecast, and then they get out and it's like, oh, wow, they can blossom into this player that they actually are. I would say the same thing with Caruso, the same thing with all these guys. So I think Kuzma is the perfect example of that, just getting out of the LA spotlight and being able to kind of turn into himself.
Yeah, totally agree. I think he was big time a victim of that, unfortunately, and through no fault of his own, really. And for my Wizards pick, I'm going to go with Rui Hachimura here, the Gonzaga guy. kind of tripped out of the gate a little bit when he made the NBA leap, and I'm happy to see him like finding his footing again. He's got a little bit of creation ability now. He's just kind of doing his thing, and like he's become the player that I thought he was going to be coming out of college. He's a blast, and I believe he's one of like 3 Japanese players in the NBA, which I
Yeah.
also think is very cool.
Mhm.
The highest drafted Japanese player in NBA history. So I always think it's cool when there's kind of like a guy repping a country or has like a home crowd behind him, and it's cool to see him performing for sure. So Rui Hachimura is my guy there.
I like it.
Next up, the Charlotte Hornets at 14. Who is your favorite player to watch on the Charlotte Hornets?
So wanted to say Terry Rozier, but again, just that PTSD of his time
Yeah.
in Boston, I couldn't do because he's another Sixer killer every time he plays us, and it's brutal. So I had to just be basic and go LaMelo because I will fully admit here, seeing LaMelo in high school and just all the hype and the big baller brand stuff, I 100% was out on him. I didn't think that he would be I didn't think he'd be an NBA player at all, let alone what he is now. And so I gladly accept defeat. I admit that I was wrong because he is a blast. Now, it's still too early to tell. Is he going to be able to be, you mentioned earlier, just can he play winning basketball? We don't know. Unfortunately, Charlotte just isn't that place, and it doesn't look like it will be that place for a long, long time. But he is very fun. He is something that the market in Charlotte needs very badly to keep interest around that team. But he's fun to watch, man. And again, just coming from where I was of like, this dude drives me nuts. He doesn't even cross half court. He's pulling out from half court. It really bugs me. To he's a legitimate NBA. He's on the trajectory to be a legit NBA star.
Yeah, I totally agree. I went with LaMelo as well for a lot of the same reasons. I'm coming a little bit from the opposite end of the spectrum. I was always a LaMelo guy. I remember watching him in high school being like, I love this guy. And for sure, there were habits that he needed to break back then and habits that he still needs to work on. But he's just so fun to watch. And just looking at his numbers, 23.1 points per game, 8.6 assists, 4.7 rebounds, shooting 11.1 three-point attempts per game, and connecting at a 38.9% rate. Those are legit numbers.
Good, man.
And
Yeah.
Again, small sample size, like early in the season, he missed some time too, some ankle injuries. They're going to need another piece there, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of how the Hornets go. I also think they love just drafting guys like Mark Williams, who I think was a great addition this year. Guys who could just catch lobs and go viral with the crazy announcer calls in Charlotte, which is awesome.
I love that dude.
Yeah, it is awesome. But yeah, I think LaMelo gets kind of lost a little bit in the shuffle of how good he truly is. And again, he has stuff to work on. He has some things to break out of his game, but I think he could be like the face of that franchise in the way that they need, in the way that they hope. So I like LaMelo. I'll be rooting for him for sure. And to wrap it up in the Eastern Conference, we have the Detroit Pistons in the 15 seed. Who is your favorite member of the Detroit Pistons?
Villanova guy. I went Sadiq Bey.
Nice.
Big fan. Again, he's another dude I could see in a Sixers uni. I love the way he plays. Stretch dude, knockdown. He's also just ripped. He is a big, strong dude. I'm a big fan of Sadiq. It sucks. I was going to pick Cade Cunningham. It sucks his injury. Like, once the Pistons slowly start drafting well and start to put these pieces together, of course, something like this happens, and that sucks because I'm a firm believer the NBA is better when teams like that are good. Like us growing up, the Pistons were always a good contending playoff team, and I want them to get back to that. But for me, I'm a big Sadiq Bey fan.
Yeah, love it. And sounds like he might be available on the trade market too. So a type of wing that the Sixers could benefit from for sure. I don't know what the asking price would be or what that becomes, but I do think he's become a little bit lost in the shuffle there and deserves a cleaner opportunity than it feels like he's getting in Detroit. So that would be something I would love. I'm going with Jalen Duren as my pick, and a guy that is still extremely raw, a Philadelphia guy, still extremely raw in his growth, but there's just like a moment or two per game that every time I watch, I'm like, okay, like this guy can be a player. And he's been fairly limited in opportunity, 24.4 minutes per game, averaging 7.7 points and 8.5 rebounds. So decent production in that. I hope he kind of gets the true chance to flourish, and still super young too. One of the youngest players coming out of the last draft class. So I like Jalen Duren, and I'll be rooting for him for sure. We'll switch gears out of the Eastern Conference. Apologize for getting a little long-winded here, but
yeah, sorry. I'll tone it down a little bit with my explanations.
no worries. I'm having fun too. So we'll switch over to the Western Conference. Leading off with the 1 seed over here is the Denver Nuggets, which a little bit of a surprise to see them at number 1 for me at least. But do you have a favorite player on the Denver Nuggets that you want to shout out?
I do. Jamal Murray. I'm a
Nice.
Jamal Murray fan. Yep. This season's kind of been a bummer seeing him come back from his injury. You can tell he's not himself yet. He just doesn't have that like explosive other level. Again, maybe it was the bubble, but seeing that Jamal Murray was like some of the funnest basketball I've ever seen. So I just keep my fingers crossed he can get back to that point. And the fact that Denver's doing what they're doing and have that first seed in the West without that type of Jamal Murray is very, very impressive. And I think speaks volumes about what they're doing. And Jokic, man, it's kind of the funny, it's turned into Embiid Jokic type deal, but the dude he's obviously for real, obviously back-to-back MVP, but yeah, there's no denying what he is doing and what he's capable of doing. He's the MVP for a reason.
Yeah, and a ton of credit to just the system that they've grown as far as maximizing a bunch of guys who have very unique skill sets. And I think it's very cool that the way that they've done that, the movement that they play with offensively, their offensive system is very impressive. And I also think, to your point, like Jamal Murray, I think is going to get continually better as the season goes off. I think this is more of a shaking off rust than like a long-term concern, at least I hope is the case. And I believe is the case. So that's scary when you think about how good this team is already. For my pick, I'm going to go with, I was torn on Bruce Brown or Aaron Gordon because they're both kind of for the same reasons here as far as masters in their role. I'm going to go with Aaron Gordon just as a guy who has reinvented himself in Denver. 16.6 points, 7.1 rebounds, 2.3 assists, shooting 36.7% from three. He's perfect for what they need him to do as far as a little bit of a grunt guy, catches lobs all the time, can defend a team's number one option. So I think he's in a very important part of that team, and cool to see him kind of finding his place there.
That trade saved his career, man. I laughed when that trade happened. I'm like, Aaron Gordon, like that's not, and I was clearly wrong. That saved him. It's a perfect fit.
Definitely. A guy that was like positionless in Orlando, couldn't really find his role, anything. It's been perfect for him to have a defined spot, have a guy that can play make for him, and happy for him to find that for sure. We'll move on to number 2, the Memphis Grizzlies. Who is your favorite Memphis Grizzlies player this year?
Cliche, but it's Ja. 100%. I have got three players in the NBA who I will watch no matter when they're playing, and Ja is up there on the list. Embiid's number 1, and I'll get to my third guy in a little bit, but Ja is just amazing. Like, I think seeing his college highlights, obviously we knew what he was capable of, but seeing how good he was his rookie year and then just seeing what he's doing this year, that, I'll be honest, that entire roster is fun. Yeah. They are awesome. Every single dude on that team is awesome. I love just the swag they play with, the swag they have. You can tell they're all buddies. Like, everything about that team is just cool. But Ja is leading. He's the leader of that squad, and I love Ja.
Yeah, totally great. And like you said, like, they know they're cool too. They know they're great too. They got that little swagger to them. They're becoming that kind of, whatever you want to call it, best of the West, like that mentality, that bop, that swagger that they play with, which is very fun. And Ja is for sure the ringleader of it. I'm going to go with Jaren Jackson Jr. as my pick for this one, who obviously I love all these guys too, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is a guy that, like, I think the ceiling is sky high for what he can become. His defensive instincts are just unreal. 3.3 blocks a game, 16.7 points, 6.4 rebounds, shooting 36.6% from three. He's got an outside game. He's got a little creation ability. And I love the nights when Ja isn't there and he starts to put on a little more responsibility on his plate. He's capable of it. So he's a guy that's still incredibly young. This whole team is incredibly young. So going to be a team to watch in the West for a long time. And they just continue to hit the nail on the head at every draft with stuff. So
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. So very impressive out of the Memphis Grizzlies, and going to be a fun team to watch for a long time. We'll move on to another fun young team is the New Orleans Pelicans. And one of the bigger surprises this year, I would say, a lot of fun names to pick from on this list. Who is your number 1 Pelicans pick?
I went with Alvarado.
Nice.
Now, clearly you either love him or hate him, but I think he is a much more lovable version of like a Marcus Smart. I'm not putting him on that level, but like that type of player. He's awesome. He is a self-made dude. He last year alone set himself up for an entire NBA career. Like, I love dudes like that. Dudes like that are impossible not to root for. I love now that, like, it's become a thing. His little steal where he hides on inbounds, like, it's coming, and at least once every game, the point guard of the opposing team will forget. And I love that. But it's very similarly, like the Grizzlies and honestly, the Magic, like those 3 teams are my funnest teams to watch in the entire league. What they're doing without Brandon Ingram, now even without Zion, like, if they get everybody healthy together at the same time, look out. Like, they could be for real. We don't know that because they haven't all really meshed and been healthy at the same time. But I love Brandon Ingram. Obviously, Zion, when he plays, is just a beast and amazing at what he does. CJ McCollum, also a freak. Like, that roster, man, their GM has pieced together a very good team.
Yeah, totally agree, and super fun to watch. I do think they're legit too. I think these are guys that are going to continue to get better. It's going to find a way to click, and I'm excited to see when it all is put together. One of the more complimentary pieces that really jumps out to me is Trey Murphy III, a guy that
Mhm.
is a very key part in a complimentary way. Like he just spaces the floor. He's athletic enough to catch lobs, be a part of the offense. Defensively, he stands up against some significant guys in his 28.3 minutes game, averaging 12.4 points, 3.9 rebounds, shooting 40.4% from three on 5.5 attempts, which is a notable step forward from the numbers that he put forth in college, which
Big
I like.
time.
Yeah, I like Trey Murphy a whole lot. That's my guy on this team. And like I said, plenty to pick from because I like just about everyone on this Pelicans roster.
Mhm.
We'll move on to number 4, the Dallas Mavericks, which I'm curious if this is my prediction for your next most entertaining guy to watch. Am I right on that?
You're right. You nailed
There
it.
it is.
He was my preseason prediction for MVP, and to this point in the season, there could be an argument for like 6 different dudes right now. But what Luka's done with this Mavs team and to have them sitting where they're currently sitting in the West is a legitimate miracle. The dude is so consistent night in, night out. He has just the slow motion game. It's almost like Paul Pierce-esque,
Yeah.
where it takes a little bit longer to get his shot off, but there's nothing you can do to stop it. You know exactly what he's going to do. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And seeing what he did the other night, it was like a week and a half ago or 2 weeks now, with his missed putback free throw, unbelievable. And then how just he's like a little kid, how excited he was, and I love him. Dallas absolutely needs to get another star immediately. I
Yeah.
said it on my podcast the second that game ended. Like, if you are Mark Cuban, you make it happen yourself. Like, you have to bring another star to complement. Do not waste this year of Luka's. He is an absolute freak of nature, and he's another guy who I will turn on the TV anytime he's playing.
Yeah, I agree. I went through the whole list of every guy trying to think of who I want to go with. Reggie Bullock, I gave some consideration to. Spencer Dinwiddie even a little, but you got to give it to Luka. There's nobody more entertaining on like an every night basis, and
Yep.
the efficiency that he plays with is impressive to me too. He's another guy that can find that blend of scoring, of playmaking in a way that's just it is brilliant. And like guys know what's coming, can't stop it. He sees the game at a crazy pace, so it really is impressive stuff. And I agree with you. He's my pick for MVP right now. It is amazing the amount of talent across the NBA and amount of like legitimate cases there are for guys. Donovan Mitchell, like you mentioned, is a guy I think should be higher up on the mentions in the list. And very cool. Both of them in their 70-point games had that missed free throw kind of moment. I think is
So sweet.
yeah, very awesome too. But yeah, I agree. Luke is the man. I'm excited to watch him for the rest of his career and hope he stays in Dallas forever for sure.
Same.
And that they reward him with that.
No kidding. No kidding.
We'll move on to number 5, the Sacramento Kings, who we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. The Beam team have become quite fun to watch this year as well. Who is your favorite Kings member this year?
I could not decide between these two guys, so I'm just going to say them both. I love De'Aaron Fox a ton. I always have. The dude is just quick. Something about lefties and the way they shoot. Their shot is just much more smooth, and I am a weirdo and appreciate watching that. But I love Fox. I love how athletic he is. I love how he can get to the bucket whenever he wants. And I also love him now that he's out of Atlanta and not killing us. I love Kevin Huerter, man. This trade, I kind of scratched my head when Atlanta made it. I get now, obviously, they were trying to get DeJounte Murray, so I understand, but he fits this squad perfectly. Like, this Sacramento offense is so much fun to watch, and seeing what he's able to do to defenses is amazing. It's a very well-rounded attack every way you look at it. They can score from every position.
Yeah, totally. Definitely a fun team. Sabonis has been the man there too. I'm going to go with Malik Monk as my pick. I've always been a Malik Monk guy dating back to the Kentucky days. I think it's cool him and Fox get to play together in the pros. Looking at him this year, 23.1 minutes per game, 14.1 points, 3.9 assists. He's got like more of a playmaking ability this year. That really hasn't been the case in his game through his entire career. So he seems to be buying into like that team style of play more, which I think is awesome. He's had a little bit of a turbulent start to his career, but I believe in the talent. I believe it's there, and I'm excited to see him kind of find his footing. And this was another team where I could have picked a number of guys, but I like Malik Monk quite a bit, always have, and I'm excited to watch that team in general.
Same. Kings, man. Who would have ever thought?
Yeah, for real. It's been a miserable couple of years, so happy to see them kind of having some fun there for sure. We'll move on to number 6, the Los Angeles Clippers, which is one of the mystery teams this year. I don't think anybody's quite sure what to make of them, but who is your favorite player on the Clippers so far this year?
So John Wall, I wanted to say, but seeing he just isn't himself, and it makes me sad, honestly, because I love John Wall, always have.
Yeah, me too.
So I had to just go Paul George on this one. Zubox gave me a little run for my money because he is a solid big.
Yeah.
But Paul George is another one of those guys who his game is just so silky smooth when he plays. That's the hard part. Him and Kawhi have all of a sudden turned into these guys where it's like, oh, who really knows what's going on with them? They could say they're healthy and just sitting, but they could be hurt. They could be hurt, but they're just sitting. Like, who knows? Like you said, a mystery team sums it up perfect. But when he's playing, I love Paul George. Always have, wherever he's been in his career. I'll always be a Paul George guy.
Yeah, very aesthetically pleasing style of play from him. The way he can just kind of cut so smooth with it, everything. And I hope they're healthy and kind of can put forth like a real postseason push. I hope they get some time on the court before that because I do think that's important as far as getting a team to gel with Kawhi and him. I'm going to go with Reggie Jackson as my pick for the Clippers, who's another guy that I've just long time been a fan of. When he does his little like gallop up the court and like the little swagger that he has in his game, I absolutely love Reggie Jackson. Looking at his numbers on the year, 27.6 minutes per game, 11.3 points, 3.7 assists. Not his best like statistical season, but there's still kind of he's fallen in the pecking order, but there's the nights where he can just kind of pop off, which are just so fun to watch. So when he gets going, to me, he's one of my favorite players across the NBA to watch. And I'm just a huge Reggie Jackson fan for sure.
I like that him and Paul George are buddies too. That whole
Yeah.
story about how kind of Paul like saved his career and brought him to LA. Like, I like all that. I like Reggie Jackson too. That's a good pick.
Definitely a fan favorite out there, which is very cool. We'll move on to the Phoenix Suns, number 7. Another team I don't think anybody's quite sure what to make of this year. Who's your favorite Suns player on the season?
I love Mikal Bridges. It still hurts my soul a little bit to
Yeah.
say that because he would be the perfect piece in Philly, and everybody knows that. But yeah, you nailed it. This Phoenix team is very odd. Like, obviously, not having Devin Booker is crucial to them, but I don't think anybody saw them taking this crazy nosedive that they did without him. It's been weird, kind of head scratching team and trying to figure it out. But we'll see. Whenever Booker comes back, even if they end in this kind of mid range in the West, they are going to cause a nightmare matchup in the playoffs when they're fully healthy and clicking. And once they figure out their Jay Crowder situation, you got to believe that they'll end up trading him. And he'll land at some sort of contender. So I'm curious to see what they get back. But I love Bridges. I don't even need to dive into it. We all know why I love him.
Yeah, I'm going with Bridges as mine too. I tried to think outside the box. I almost went with Torrey Craig, who I think is awesome too. I've been a DeAndre Ayton guy, but I'm starting to step back a little bit from that ledge. He's got all the talent in the world, but there just is so clearly something there with the mentality or just something is not right with his personality and the mix on the team or whatever it is. And I do think that's a part of this like issue with the team for sure. And I think that shows in their hesitancy to give him the money this offseason. Just not great feelings here. Something's a little off with the vibe in Phoenix, but I also am like, I guess, tainted by that like game 7 loss to the Mavericks last year. I will never get that out of my brain as far as considering them like that legit, because that is one of the more embarrassing playoff losses of all time, I believe. So
you got to show up. You have to.
Yeah, at least get some sort of fight, and they didn't. But yeah, I'm going with Mikal Bridges as mine. Has led the NBA in games in 3 out of his 4 full seasons in the NBA, which is just nuts. So an absolute Iron Man, and he is the man for sure. We'll move on to the Golden State Warriors at number 8. Been a turbulent season for them for sure. Who's been your favorite Warriors player to watch this year?
Steph also makes this list for me I will watch him anytime the TV's on. Again, as a shooter, he's turned into just much more of the off-ball shooter, right? He handles the ball arguably up there with Kyrie, like for best in the league. And I really appreciate that. Obviously, him being hurt. I've loved what Clay's done recently. He has not been nearly what he has been, a little shell of himself. And it seems like the last like 2 or 3 weeks, he's really kind of flipped it on. And I love seeing that because obviously him coming back from injury, those two dudes together are just amazing. So I'm going Steph, but Clay a close second.
Yeah, definitely fair. If they get healthy, they're still going to be a force to reckon with this year, even with kind of the smart stuff. As long as they get a ticket in, they got a chance. Don't count this team out. I'm going to go with Kevon Looney as my pick here, a guy that has sneakily crept up one of my
underrated.
Yeah, very underrated. And I think depending on how this Draymond stuff plays out at the end of the year, I think he is going to be the next kind of Draymond Green within that role, which I think he's going to be ready when all things are said and done. A little bit of playmaking ability, which is super intriguing to me at that spot. Looking at his numbers, 6.6 points, points, 8.4 rebounds, 2.8 assists, shoots 62.4% from the field. Very efficient, very smart player. He can defend a lot of positions, and I think he's becoming a pretty key glue guy within that rotation. So I like Looney a lot. I think he's a blast to watch, and he's going to be a key member of that team for sure.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and we'll move on. Looking outside the playoff picture a little, right on the edge is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been an interesting guy. Obviously, they made the Gobert trade as their big splash this season. Also has not come together in the way they hoped. Who's been your favorite player to watch on the Timberwolves?
Dude, that Gobert trade could go down as one of the worst trades. If things continue to trend this way, it could go down as one of the biggest highway robberies ever. Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. I love Ant Edwards. I love him. But they're so weird because you can clearly see when he's checked in or when he's checked out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been like the story of this Timberwolves team the whole season is they're either in it and you can see they can compete with anybody when they're all checked in. But like you said, similar to Phoenix, it's like the vibes are off. Something is just weird, like the mentality. D'Lo went through one of the worst stretches in his entire career earlier. Like, I don't know. I love their offseason moves. When they brought in Kyle Anderson, I'm like, great. Like what a piece. That's going to be awesome. And just nothing has meshed. Nothing's gelled. Rudy didn't even finish the game the other night on the floor. Like that's crazy to me. So I love Edwards. Obviously he's a fantastic villain in movies we found out this summer, which is fun.
Sure.
But yeah, this whole team is just bizarre. When they're checked in, they're fun, but when they're checked out, it's like abysmal basketball.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I'm also going to go with Ant Edwards just because I think they need to fully embrace that as him being the guy. I don't think the Gobert trade was a step in that direction. They're going to kind of have to backtrack out of that. Edwards has let his little jabs fly to indicate that as well. I do want to ask you, which trade do you think will age worse? Will it be the Rudy Gobert trade or the Russell Wilson trade in the NFL?
Dude, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I am going to say, as is right now, the Gobert trade, only because Denver fired their head coach and Russ looked a little bit better the last 2 weeks. But he still is a nightmare, and that whole Broncos team is a nightmare. They need to get healthy, though. They've had a lot of injuries, so we'll see. But that's a very good comp, those two.
Yeah. I'm interested to see how that one shakes out. But yeah, both potentially franchise just plummeting moves. So we'll be interested to see how it shakes out for sure. We'll move on to number 10, the Utah Jazz. So out near you, another team that I think has become one of the more fun teams to watch this year and been a surprising team. What do you think of the Jazz, and who's your guy on the team this year?
Easy one to say is Lauri Markkanen, who is absolutely without a doubt an all-star. I don't think there's any debate. The way that he's played and all of a sudden taking this insane jump in his career to do what he's doing now is amazing. But I'm going to go Jordan Clarkson. I love Jordan Clarkson. I think there's a report, Mark Stein came out just a couple days ago that said that he's turned down multiple contract extensions to stay here in Utah. So you got to believe that means he's looking for the out. Mm-hmm. And the way that this team and the season started in Utah was so good, but they peaked way too early. And you almost knew that this was going to happen, kind of falling in that nightmare of we're out of the lottery, but we're not going to quite make in the playoff, like just no man's land, which is terrible. But I think they sell, and I think Clarkson's going to get scooped up by a contender. He's got another year left on his deal, and not like 14 mil, so not crazy. But I love Clarkson, man. Watching what he did last night too, taking over the last like minute and 30 seconds. He had like 11 straight points and 7 points in like a span of like 15 seconds. He's sweet. I love Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah, always ready to square up too, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Always looking for a fight.
Yeah. But yeah, I like Jordan Clarkson as well. I am going to take the layup here and go Lauri Markkanen. I'm a Lauri Markkanen guy. I've written several articles pounding the table for the Sixers to trade for him back when he was on the Bulls to pair him with Embiid, which would have been absolutely awesome.
Perfect.
Granted, who knows what those conversations were, what the price was if the Sixers could even pull that off, but that would have been amazing. And I love his game. It's great to see him taking that full leap as the legitimate all-star that he's now proving to be. Still super young. I think he's a real building block for this Jazz team, and he's awesome. So I love Lauri. I'm excited to see what he develops and do fully. We'll switch gears and move into the Portland Trail Blazers, a team that started hot and has fallen off. Still very kind of undefined in what they're going to be. Who's your guy on the Trail Blazers?
Love Anthony Simons. Love him. Hands down. Dame is obviously another one of those dudes that when he's healthy, you turn on the TV to watch. But Simons has been able to step up and play this role essentially to replace Dame when he's been out. And it's been awesome. I loved him when he got drafted. Really young guy. And the way that he scores is just so nasty. You can tell that he's kind of had Dame as a mentor, the way that he plays. And yeah, big fan. I think his ceiling is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, he is the man. Super fun to watch. Similar to how I feel about like Jordan Poole, like
Yeah,
modeling his game purely after Steph Curry. I think Simons has kind of done the same with Dame, and it's clear that they have a ton of belief in him as an organization, which is very, very cool, very fun player to watch, and very exciting to see what he's going to develop into. I'm gonna go with Josh Hart as my pick here, just because he's a guy that is super necessary on the team. A guy who's a terrific rebounder for his size, stands just 6'4", but averaging 8.4 rebounds a game, 9.8 points, shooting 35.1% from three. He's amazing at the one-man fast breaks too, which is a key part of
he
what they really do. And I love Josh Hart, always have. Excited to see what he continues to be on this team, and he's going to be important to them throughout the season. So shout out Josh
Agreed.
Hart.
One of the most underappreciated guys in the whole league.
Definitely, definitely. We'll move on to the 12th seed in the West, which is the Los Angeles Lakers right now. And I don't know what to say about the Lakers really, other than like this has been the LeBron show this year. He's making plenty of noise with his little comments and everything. But yeah, what do you think of the Lakers? Who's your guy?
Yeah, what LeBron's done at his age is amazing, but you're right. It just besides him, this team just doesn't make sense. And all of us said this going into the season. This roster
Yeah,
doesn't make sense. They didn't do anything to better themselves. I will say this, and this is who I'm going to pick. Shout out Russell Westbrook for
nice.
owning the role and coming off the bench and actually excelling in that role. He is obviously he's got his downsides and everything like that, but I have been very, very impressed with him kind of owning up to it and actually producing and playing actually well for them.
Yeah, and it's not easy to do that, especially with all the accomplishments, the amount of time that he's been the man in his career. He really has had a reality check, been taking the team first approach, and it is benefiting the Lakers. So shout out to Russell Westbrook for sure. I'm gonna go with Austin Reeves as my pick here, who I absolutely love him. He was a guy I remember watching in college, being like, I love this guy. I just don't know if he can quite crack an NBA team. And I was wrong. There's been moments where he is taking the big time shots for this team. Against the Sixers, he looked like the
Yeah.
Lakers' best player this year. And he's just super smart player, willing to put his body on the line, willing to make the right decision, and just a guy that I think LeBron especially clearly likes, which is obviously very important if you're any sort of Lakers player, whatever. But shout out Austin Reeves. He's the man. I think he's carved out a long-term NBA role for himself, and I love him. So Austin Reeves,
He's
my pick.
he's another one of those dudes that just looks like everybody went to high school with a guy like that.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Move on to the 13th seed, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Another team that's pretty fun, very young. Who's your pick for the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Josh Giddey, huge Giddey
Nice.
fan. Yep. Shout out my guy Cone on Twitter.
Mhm.
Huge OKC. Honestly, the only OKC fan that I know. But he's awesome, man. He's a threat for a triple double any given night. And just his style of play is fun. Him and SGA together, they're fun. This is another, like you said, another team that it almost has felt a little too long. Like, I don't know how many more seasons we can be like, okay, like this team's fun and young. Like, when are they gonna make the jump? But as of now, they are really fun, and
Mhm.
they could give any team any given night a run for their money. But I just want to see them. They clearly have all the assets in the world, so I'm curious to see what they end up doing with them. To either just bring in pieces, go out and trade for big names, because you've got the young guys, kind of pair them with somebody who's proven they can do it.
Yeah, and shout out Cone doing some big things, some Bleacher Report streams and everything else he's
Mhm.
got. So amazing to see there for sure. Thunder also doing some big things. I'm going with Poku as my pick here. One of the as many unique players we talked about, he might take the cake as the number one, and
Yeah.
just like a bizarre looking, but there's moments
Yeah.
where you can just see the flashes, and just looking at his numbers on the year, 21.8 minutes, 8.8 points, 5.1 rebounds, 2.0 assists, 1.3 blocks, shooting 37.6% from three. He can take over in moments and kind of do his thing. So fun. And I think next year is going to be the year where the Thunder completely flip the switch. Chet Holmgren obviously out with the injury. I'm a big Chet guy as well. I think he's
Mhm.
a terrific addition to that team. And SGA like is the absolute man. He's must watch television as well. So this Thunder team is absolutely heading in the right direction. And I think next year is going to be a big year for him and one to watch for sure.
Agreed. And for Cone's sake, let's hope it's next year.
Yeah, yeah,
I know he's getting antsy.
definitely, definitely. Two more here. We got the San Antonio Spurs sitting at the 14th seed. Who's your favorite San Antonio Spurs this year?
That is a funny question, and I had a hard time looking at the roster.
Me too.
You're gonna laugh at this, but I like Doug McDermott.
Nice.
I think Dougie McBuckets is a guy who could legitimately step into a contender right now and
Mhm.
come off the bench and actually have some sort of role. I've loved him since college. Big fan, obviously playing at Creighton with his dad, like fun stuff, good story. Everybody knew him, but he just kind of is lost in San Antonio and in this weird rebuild for them. But I like him. I genuinely think he could be another guy who could help a team actually give meaningful minutes. So I'm going Dougie McBuckets. Have to.
Yeah, that's a great one. And he is like a forgotten man there just on how everything has happened. So hopefully he gets scooped up. They'll definitely be sellers at the deadline for sure. So teams should definitely tune in for that. I'm gonna go with a little younger guy in Jeremy Sochan there, which is another. I like these unique guys. The guy, he plays with a crazy high motor. He's just all over the place, defensively especially. He's shooting the one-handed free throws now, which is just amazing. And his percentage has gone up a notable bit since he started doing that. But he's a guy who's still very early in his developmental process, but something like worth tuning into at San Antonio, and a guy that I think in the long term is going to be very good. And he leaves it out there every single night, which to me is all you can do when you're on a team like that. So shout out Jeremy Sochan. That's my guy.
Yep. It'll be Victor. It'll be Victor next year. That's what we'll both say.
Yeah, true that. And if Victor goes to San Antonio, then they're right back in like the mix right again. So and they do have some pieces, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell. They've got some guys, so they're not as far off as I think maybe it feels at times. But yeah, that would be sweet for them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Last up, the Houston Rockets with the worst record in the NBA right now. Who's your favorite Rockets player that you've watched so far this year?
Could go the easy route with Green or Kevin Porter Jr., but I went Kenyon Martin Jr.
Nice.
I like the way he plays. I think there was a report he's going to be in the dunk contest, which I think will be awesome. I just love he plays just like his dad did. He's just a smaller version of it, which I love. Every team could benefit off a guy like that who just plays above the rim, which for his size I think is very, very cool as well. But I don't know. The Rockets are another one of those teams where it's like they've got these guys, but I don't think like Kevin Porter Jr. can show that he can play, but is he going to be that guy? I don't know. They're fun to watch, ton of offense, but they don't do it for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're one of the supposed to be fun young teams, but I don't really enjoy watching that much. And there's a lot of just shot hunting, ISO ball. Yeah, a lot of that. So I think they could use a little bit of a culture change and bring in some veteran stuff, start to shift gears there. Jalen Green, I think, is talented, but like too much freedom for a lot of these guys right now in a way that I think could be harmful to them in the long run. I'm going to go with Alperen Sengun as my guy that I like to watch on the Rockets, though. Another he's awesome. He can pass out of the post. He's had some poster dunks this year too, which have been amazing to watch. And just a quick look at his numbers: 14.6 points, 8.6 rebounds, 2.6 assists, shooting 54.9% from the field. He can do a little bit of it all. He's a guy I don't want to get lost in their core because I think he's good enough to play like a real role. And I love Alpy, so shout out him. Shout out, I guess, to the Rockets. But that's my pick there.
I like it.
So yeah, I apologize for running a little wrong for keeping you for so long, Josh, but that was awesome chopping it up for sure.
I loved it, dude. Seriously, that was great. Anytime we get to chat basketball is great, but going through the whole league like that was very fun. I loved it.
Definitely. So I appreciate all you guys for tuning in for the little look around the league. Make sure to stay posted. We got some awesome stuff coming, some film breakdowns on the way, stuff like that. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you next time.